What's up? Welcome back to the Cinema MD podcast. My name is Matt.
And I'm Dana.
Today we're talking about the big new release, Black Panther, and then we're going to also finally look back at both of our top 10 films of 2017. So let's jump right into Black Panther. This movie has kind of taken over the world at the moment. Yeah, it's an excellent movie though. So I think it's kind of well deserved.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally worth the hype. Super fun. Obviously cool to see, I think, a perspective and a, culture. Obviously Wakanda, not a real place, but, still sort of a culture that has not been explored in the comic book and superhero universe before. So, okay, I shouldn't say that. It's obviously in the comic books.
Well, the film versions of the comic books.
Doesn't get as much attention as some of the other superhero stories, so I thought it was super cool. And I thought that the sort of futuristic, what would an African country look like had it not been colonized by, white bastards. I thought it was a cool idea. I thought it was well executed.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, you've got an excellent director in Ryan Coogler who has proven himself with movies like Creed and Fruitvale Station. He's done some great stuff. I think he's going to do great stuff in the future as well. Chadwick Boseman is proven. He's an excellent Black Panther. And Michael B. Jordan is an excellent villain, which is something that I feel like a lot of the Marvel movies have been lacking. They have these great storylines and these great, these great hero origin stories, and they interweave with each other so well to tell this sweeping story that is culminating in Infinity War. The big issue is, with the exception of Loki, there haven't been too many good villains in the series, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, a lot of them feel a little one-dimensional, or you have, I feel like, one of two extremes, either the villains that are too easily defeated, and then on the other end, you have ones that seem like there's no defeating them. So I feel like this one struck kind of a good balance between those. And obviously he was sympathetic up to a point, with his own backstory as far as his character goes. You could totally understand why he felt, slighted and why he sort of wanted to, get what he felt was coming to him. Obviously he took it to a super dark place, so had to be stopped.
It was still refreshing to see a Marvel villain that was a sympathetic character. Even the hero sympathized with him. It wasn't a completely, no pun intended, black and white issue. And no, the villain wasn't black or wasn't white, but there was a white villain. But the main villain wasn't white.
It was like the villain you had to beat before you get to the boss. That's kind of how I felt the story went a little bit.
There was basically a mid-boss and then the big boss. It's true. So that was
also, Andy Serkis, great job. Nice to see him not, covered in little white dots and CGI.
He reminded me of his character Cookie from King Kong.
I totally didn't remember that character at all, and after looking it up, I was like, holy crap, Andy Serkis right under my nose.
I mean, he was Claw in Age of Ultron too, but basically the character just reminds me of Cookie, the chef from King Kong, because it's like the only other role I can really remember him playing where he's himself.
Well, a human person anyway.
Right, where he's not a CGI fake thing. I guess he was also in, what the hell was he in? This is going to kill me now. I'm not going to remember it.
Unprepared.
No, he's in like a romantic comedy. He is like the head of a newspaper or like Cosmo-esque magazine or something ridiculous. I gotta look it up.
Feel free. Bonus for our listeners, if you can come up, name that movie, name that role.
I'm gonna look it up right now so Dana has the monologue about Black Panther for a minute.
No, I did think it was totally cool. Obviously, it should be mentioned that there were strong female characters, which is always great. I felt like they, even though it was still a patriarchal society in Wakanda, that it was still led by men, it really showed that women were treated as equals, though, without coming out and saying, you know, you're a woman, you're my sister, you're equal to me. I felt like they didn't need to spell it out for you because they just showed it. Everybody's opinions were respected equally. Obviously, the respected warriors were women. I thought it was really cool.
13, going on 30. That's the one.
We were all just dying of anticipation on that.
By the way, that's a great movie. Jennifer Garner, Mark Ruffalo, they're killing it.
It's probably the height of Jennifer Garner's career.
Juno.
Oh yeah. All right, I'll give that to her.
So yeah, Andy Serkis, way to go.
Any commentary on my female monologue offshoot there?
I was busy on Google.
Well, yeah, so share your feelings.
On what?
The ladies in Black Panther.
First of all, you didn't even know that it was Michonne from The Walking Dead until the end of the movie.
Listen, you didn't need to call me out like that. It was killing me the whole time that I couldn't place the actress, because obviously I recognized her face and her voice, even though it had a kind of wacky fake accent.
Do you know how to pronounce her name? Because I don't. Denai Guerrera?
Yeah, that's it. You did it.
I am awesome.
Yes. So I felt foolish in the theater waiting for the extra scene that I had to IMDb quickly. And then I was like, oh my god, of course it's Michonne. So, yes. But I guess the no hair thing just really threw me off.
There were strong female characters. There were strong characters of color. I guess they were all black. I guess don't really have to say people of color because it was pretty much an all black cast with the exception of like Martin Freeman and Andy Serkis. But it was some strong black protagonists, a great black villain, lots of great female characters.
Yeah, I liked that, like, the smart people were women, the strong people were women. It was just all, like, they covered all their bases, I thought.
I agree. I thought some of the technology they came up with was really cool, too. It's supposed to be all using vibranium. So all of the technology was different than what they have in the rest of the world. Like, even Martin Freeman's, CIA character or whatever was kind of blown away by the ways they were using vibranium. They kind of use it as like a weird little, there was a cool like communicator device, and it like the vibranium sort of forms itself into like a little 3D model of who you're talking to in your hand. There was some really weird kind of cool stuff they did.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously in the rest of the Marvel universe, you pretty much just have, the shield and then Black Panther's claws and his assorted accessories. But yeah, I mean, they could use it to power their city, for all sorts of virtual technologies. It was super cool.
Well, of course, I guess minor spoiler here, not really plot-wise, but maybe pertaining to the entire MCU in the future. Vibranium is like this super rare, ultra mega valuable thing that is worth millions and billions of dollars, whatever. It's like, it comes out that like, oh yeah, Wakandans? Yeah, they like, that shit is what they make their shirts out of.
It's true.
Okay. So your average Wakandan farmer could walk into the United States and, buy a mansion. They could just they're staying at a hotel, can't foot the bill. Here, take my shirt. I'll buy your fucking hotel chain. It was a little ridiculous that their clothes are made out of, like, it's woven into their... I didn't like that. Whatever. That was a little overkill, but whatever. I get it. They live on a fucking vibranium mountain underground, basically. So, yeah, whatever. They're basically the dwarves of the world. They're living on Erebor with the rivers of gold flowing beneath them, essentially.
So, dwarves of the Marvel Universe, I'm not sure that...
So, I made a Lord
fictional...
for you non-nerds. Did non-nerds listen to movie podcasts? Anyways, it's way. A Lord of the Rings reference, guys. Erebor, look it up.
I'm not sure that, the Wakandans would be okay with the comparison, but I don't know.
No, dwarves they're like almost bad guys in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
They're like borderline bad guys.
So unfair comparison.
They're
but
basically huge
sort of.
assholes that hoard their wealth and don't help anybody.
Oh.
Gimli being like the only exception.
Sort of true too.
I know. It is kind of. I mean, hey.
I see it. Maybe not personality wise though.
Oh, I also have to say, so we've gotten into some of the gender and race aspects of this movie, and that's a big reason why it's making kind of the stir that it is, in addition to the fact that it's a great movie and it's making a ton of money. But also, there are a lot of very relevant and timely immigration issues and sort of nationalist versus globalist issues that get brought up. I don't know how much we want to get into that, but it's very clear that the film favors a more globalist view of things by the end of the movie, and it favors a very not necessarily, I don't know about pro-immigration, but at least like pro the idea of immigration and integration of cultures.
Yeah, I'd say integration is kind of a better word there, but
they do very specifically talk about not building borders, aka the wall, aka Donald Trump. I think he would have an aneurysm if he saw this movie.
Let's hope, fingers crossed.
You heard it here first. We've gotten political. It's a fitting time to get political. We're talking about Black Panther. It's a good movie.
For sure.
It's a political movie. It's making a statement. It's doing things and stuff. We liked it. I give it a 9 out of 10.
Same.
It is a great Marvel movie. It's a great superhero movie. I don't know what else to say. All the Marvel movies are good, and this is one of the better ones. 9 out of 10. There you go. Done.
Yeah, I would say that, there's definitely, if you go back and watch all the Marvel movies that, go into the series here, there's definitely ones that are better than others and ones that you can kind of pick out as both fan favorites and obviously personal favorites. But yeah, this one is definitely kind of towards the top there of excellent Marvel movies.
And you know what I'm going to be watching as an awesome double feature when this comes out? Black Panther, 13 going on 30. Booking it.
Just doing an Andy Serkis, theme.
Yeah, I'll follow that up with The Prestige, where he plays David Bowie's assistant when David Bowie is Nikola Tesla.
Yeah. See, I knew he was around. He sneaks in. He's very sneaky.
Sneaky.
Mm-hmm.
So after our Black Panther review here, we obviously loved it. We're going to move on to something that we've kind of been delaying because we wanted to make sure we saw everything.
Mostly everything.
Mostly everything. We wanted to see everything that we thought would be relevant. And, with award season kind of coming up, a lot of times these movies don't show up in theaters everywhere until it gets closer to the awards. So I think we feel confident now to give each of our individual top 10 films of 2017. If you've ever gone and done this, if you see as many movies as we did this year, it's really, really hard to narrow it down to 10 movies.
Yeah, I don't even think that I could tell you exactly how many movies that we saw this year, both together, and there were some movies that you saw that I didn't, and yeah, probably not vice versa, just that way, but yeah, I tried to go through a list of movies that were released in 2017, and then I looked at my MoviePass app to see what I had already gone to see. Also checked my own Instagram account, as silly as that sounds, to see all the movies I'd posted about Fantastic Fest. So all of those things went into the decision. It was, my initial list was well over 30. Narrowed it down to 13. Getting rid of those.
Did you, was it 13 going on 30?
Nobody.
It
was the other way.
You see what you did there, though?
Yeah.
Dude, yeah. It's a theme. It's happening.
Nope.
We're going to watch that. You've never seen it. We need
yes,
to watch it.
I have.
Yeah, right.
You didn't ask. I have totally seen that movie.
You heard it here first. She saw 13 going on 30 before she saw Gremlins.
Yeah, I guess so.
She still hasn't seen Big Trouble in Little China. That's an episode that's happening soon.
Not all the way through. I know. Anyway.
It's like my favorite movie.
Narrowing it down was difficult
Of
once
ever.
I got to the final 13. So I did manage to get it down to 10, but I do have 3 honorable mentions because it was a long deliberation.
All right, so I'll stick with your 3 honorable mention rule. You can give your 3 honorable mentions first here. Let's start it off.
Oh, we're doing that first? Okay.
I would think you start with the honorable mentions because they didn't make the list, right?
All right. That's fair. That's fair. So, number 3 in my honorable mentions, Wind River. I thought that this was excellent. This was one that we reviewed once upon a time, I believe.
We did review this one, yes.
I thought it was super good. I really didn't have a lot of high expectations of it before we saw it, but I think the story really holds up, and I think it would be good for repeat viewing. I really liked that one.
I had to poop in that movie, and I almost missed, like, the big turning point, dramatic, tense scene in the movie. I got back, like, right when everything was happening.
Yeah, it was kind
Holy
of a
crap,
slow burn.
I was literally 30 seconds away from missing everything that happened in that movie.
Yeah, it's true. I forgot about that. Yeah, see, now we do have to rewatch it because you missed a solid, portion.
Listen, I did some serious work in the short amount of time I was gone. I mean, it could have, if we were home, it would have been like, pause Netflix, let me grab my novel and get through about 4 chapters before I come back out and finish this once the sun goes down.
Yeah, luckily you were able to power through because that was not an option in the theater. Thank goodness for everyone involved.
But I agree. Wind River was a great movie. I think that's a great pick for honorable mention. What are your other honorable mentions here?
Number 2 for me was Anna and the Apocalypse. That was the first film that we saw at Fantastic Fest this year, and hopefully is getting a release date for the upcoming holidays of this year.
Yeah, it should be out sometime in probably between like September and November of 2018 would be my guess. I don't know if it's going to get a wide release, but I know it's at least getting some sort of release plus American distribution. So it might be like a Netflix or straight to Blu-ray kind of thing. We'll see.
It was super fun. For those of you who don't recall, it is a Christmas zombie musical. Had fantastic songs. I thought the acting was good. Matt's big criticism of it was that it was not gory enough for him being a zombie movie. I thought the gore level was fine. I just thought that they managed to make modern day musical work, which I feel like is challenging, and still be an effective horror story.
Well, I think it's a great movie, by the way, and I think it's a ton of fun, and in the growing pantheon of must-watch Christmas movies, this is added to my list. This is a great movie.
Yeah.
But my criticism was more, it could have used more gore, sure, but I'm weird. I was just watching Cannibal Holocaust the other day before bed, so that's the kind of person that I am. My biggest criticism was actually that I felt like it was trying too hard and too obviously to be an Edgar Wright movie. It really wanted to be Shaun of the Dead the musical, and it wasn't quite as, the songs were great, don't get me wrong, but I feel like it tried to basically mimic a lot of the shots, a lot of the cuts, a lot of the edits, and a lot of the witty dialogue that Shaun of the Dead has and other Edgar Wright films, and it just didn't quite nail it.
See, now I thought that it was a very obvious and sort of fond homage to that. I didn't think that it was trying to, I guess you could say that an homage is emulating something, but I didn't think it was trying to go quite as far. I would say it's pretty fair to say that there is no sort of repeating Shaun of the Dead.
Listen,
but I don't know.
I have a written review of this on our website. I gave it an 8 out of 10. I liked it a lot. It was on my list until I made some later cuts. So I'm not knocking the movie. I'm highly recommending this movie.
Yes.
I'm just giving my, maybe unfair criticism of it, but that's what I thought. I thought there were it could have been a little bit better.
My number 1, moving on, for my honorable mention, this was on my top 10. It did get cut. It was on the bottom because I forgot about a movie that we saw earlier this year. But my number 1 honorable mention was Logan. I love the X-Men. That's probably one of my favorite comic book superhero franchises. Not the movies, like the actual X-Men stories. movies, yes and no. Logan, I thought was great. I thought it was an interesting direction to go with the characters. I think it, was probably kind of cathartic for, oh boy, Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart. I blinked for a second. To kind of close out their roles in that way. Totally gave me the feels. They're some of my favorite characters, and I just thought it was really well done and like super serious for a superhero movie. I thought it was cool to see something new in that genre.
Yeah, I think Logan was excellent. I think if there's one thing that Logan suffered from, it was shitty villain syndrome. I couldn't tell you the villain's name.
Yeah, I would agree. I feel like what I liked most about the movie were sort of like the character interactions. So yeah, no. It wasn't really about the villain.
It really wasn't about the action. It wasn't about the villain. It was about the interactions between Logan, Professor X, and what's her face, X-23 or whatever the hell the girl's name is.
All the kids.
The kids in general. The kids. There you go. Logan's great. I agree. I think it's a solid honorable mention list for you. I didn't really come up with an honorable mention list, but I'm going to just throw these out there right now. My top 3 that didn't make my list. So, number 3, I'm going to have Blade Runner 2049. I think this was a great follow-up to Blade Runner. I think that it was an almost impossible task to please fans of the original and also make new kind of fans of the series want to invest the time to watch the original, because let's be honest, if you're not into it, if you're not in the right mood, like, watching Blade Runner can be difficult.
It took me a couple tries to get through Blade Runner. I was a little sleepy during the first one, and in the second one, we watched it smack in the middle of the afternoon. I think I had a cup of coffee, and I still started nodding off.
Listen, you put some Vangelis on, and yeah, there's a good chance I might just nod off at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought the world building they did in Blade Runner 2049 was excellent. I thought Ryan Gosling was great. Harrison Ford was actually in it more than I thought. Like, I always just assume whenever I see Harrison Ford now that he's gonna be like, have like this little cameo, and I thought they were gonna milk it, but he was actually in a chunk of the movie, and he played an important role. I didn't hate Jared Leto either, which is I normally do, so that's good.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed that movie a lot too.
But yeah,
I mean, it didn't make either an honorable mention or my top 10, but I can appreciate the sort of amazing visual quality of the film and sort of fleshing out a story that was pretty basic in the original movies. And kind of building on that. So it was an excellent movie, but I didn't have that initial super fan feeling about Blade Runner, so I kind of wasn't in that group.
So number 2 on my honorable mention list will be... What do I want to do? This is tough.
Well, yeah, you didn't prepare.
I didn't prepare for the honorable mentions. It was thrust upon me, you know? So I'm going to say Mary and the Witch's Flower, which is...
That was a good one, too. That was hard to cut.
Animated film from Studio Panak, who are basically the spiritual successors of Studio Ghibli. I think they have a lot of the original animators and things like that. So you've got a lot of the Miyazaki film kind of bloodlines flowing through this movie. And it's just kind of a great, adorable, creative, inventive animated movie.
Super adorable.
And it's about a girl named Mary who finds a flower that gives her magical powers, and it kind of has this weird, kooky Harry Potter vibe to it for a while, and it goes off the rails and gets a little crazy. But it's a cute movie. The animation is beautiful. It tells kind of it's not like a super inventive, creative story per se, but a lot of the animation, the ideas, the little creatures and characters are super cool and funny and memorable, and I just think it's a great animated film. And it was actually in theaters around here for like a little while at the end of the year. So I would assume
didn't really get a lot of
that
attention, obviously.
it didn't get much attention. It'll probably get a Blu-ray release soon. But Mary and the Witch's Flower, if you're a fan of Miyazaki films, Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, anything like that, like, seek this movie out. You will not be disappointed. It's a great movie.
For sure.
Number 1 on my honorable mention list, and this is one that I think all my friends were surprised that I didn't have in my top 10 when I told them some of the movies that were on my list, is Baby Driver. Because Baby Driver was in my like top 5 for a very long time. And it's really only after repeated views and maybe my own personal bias against Kevin Spacey that it's kind of dropped out of my top 10. I think it's a great movie. I love it. I really enjoy watching it. I've probably watched it like 4 or 5 times now. That being said, I think after my first couple views I loved it, and then it just kind of, obviously it's in my honorable mention. I still love it. I think it's a great movie, but it's not that like all-time classic that I thought it might turn out to be for me. For whatever reason, it just didn't make my top 10, but I still think that it's some of the best chase, like, car scenes that have been in films since
ever, probably.
I mean, they're really well done.
Mm-hmm.
By Edgar Wright, by the way, who did not direct Anna and the Apocalypse.
I hear ya, buddy.
There's some great music. Best use of a Queen song since Edgar Wright and Shaun of the Dead.
Oh man, look what he did there.
Yeah, that's right. Full circle. But if you haven't seen Baby Driver,
ignore Kevin Spacey. Sorry.
It's been out for a while. You're dumb if you haven't seen it yet. Don't ignore it just because Kevin Spacey's a twat.
Super twat.
That's all I can say. He's kind of intolerable in the movie, knowing that he's as big of an asshole as he is, but the rest of the movie is fantastic, and most of the film doesn't have Kevin Spacey in it, so, there you go. On to our top 10s.
Heck yeah.
Oh, I also have to bring this up because neither of us included a certain film in our top 10s that I know we both liked a lot, and I don't want this to be, and we didn't review this one. It's a big one. I don't want this to be an indictment of this film because dickheads on the internet are trying to, shit on this movie because they put too many strong female characters in it, which is a bunch of bullshit. So,
I'm just can't even wait to hear what you're going to say. I have no idea.
Star Wars Episode 7.
Oh, yeah. It was good. We didn't talk about it, which is
7?
surprising.
I'm in 8. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, Star Wars people. I'm also a Star Wars person.
Star Wars, the most recent.
The Last Jedi is what we're talking about.
Yeah, it totally didn't make the list, not that it was bad. It was great, and we were going to review it. I think that was during the time that we were experiencing the plague at our house, and it just never happened. Your thoughts, briefly. Go ahead.
The Last Jedi is an excellent Star Wars movie. It's not the best Star Wars movie. It's not my favorite Star Wars movie, but it's right smack dab in the middle, and I don't think it does anything to harm the series. I don't think that it does anything to ruin the series. I think it took the series forward in some interesting directions, and it made me excited for what they're going to do with these new characters, this new generation of characters, because this is the film that basically thrust them into the main character roles. We all thought that Luke was going to come in and save the day. Spoiler alert, he really didn't come in and save the day. And I think that people were pissed because they were holding on to this belief that the characters they loved from 40 fucking years ago were going to be the characters, those same characters 40 years in the future, and that's not how the world works. That's not how life works. I think it was important that the director and the Star Wars universe in general made the decision to move on from those characters and embrace this new generation and this new cast.
Yeah, see, it's hard for me in a long-running series like this, if you're going to include the original Star Wars, the prequels, whatever you want to include or not include, or if we're even just talking about the newest part of the franchise. It's hard for me to pick a favorite because I end up viewing this as just a continuation of the same story. So, yes, over time and with repeat watchings, eventually you kind of start to get more attached to one film over another. For me, though, as they come out, and I've only seen each of them maybe once or twice, it's hard for me to go, yes, this one was my favorite, or no, I didn't like this one as much, because to me it's just all blurred into one story. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought visually it was great, as it always is, and as it should be. Loved Lego-shaped Kylo Ren with no shirt on. I thought that was an extremely uncomfortable scene, and it made me super happy. And I also loved all the resulting memes from it. But, yeah, no, I thought it was a cool movie. I thought that they went in a lot of fun directions with it, and, yeah, I'm just ready to see more, move on with characters, do stuff.
Okay, so we spent a long time talking about our honorable mentions, and I wanted to mention Star Wars because we didn't get to it. So let's jump right into our actual top 10. I guess I'll go first since you went first with your honorable mentions.
Sure.
So it's coming in at number 10 on Matt's Cinema MD podcast official top 10 list is The Disaster Artist. I loved this movie. I think James Franco, I hate that I have to preface so many movies that I review now with, this guy's probably an asshole, but I really like this movie, and it made me laugh. It's about the making of the terrible, awful, hilarious film The Room by Tommy Wiseau. Wiseau, who cares, whatever.
Sure.
And James Franco plays Tommy Wiseau, and he does such an excellent job of making him out to just be the weirdest human being alive. Really, Dave Franco's probably like the main character as his friend Greg, but Tommy Wiseau is
so weird.
I mean, this movie blew me away. I didn't laugh harder. Maybe one or two other movies I laughed close to as much as this, but this was like constant laughter because of how absolutely insane the true story of the making of The Room was. It was ridiculous, and I think it's worth seeing, even if you think James Franco's a huge douchebag. The movie's worth seeing. So check out The Disaster Artist just to see a great performance and to see a very insane true story.
Yeah, I did find it super funny. I did laugh a lot. It didn't make my top 10, just because there were so many good ones this year.
All right, do we want to go back and forth, or do we want to just me to bust out my top 10 list and then you bust out yours?
Whatever you want to do.
All right.
Well, I'll won't talk as much. We'll get through it faster.
Okay.
We don't want to bore you guys too much. Okay. Number 10 for me, which I think falls somewhere on your list too, so we won't talk too much about it. Brigsby Bear. This was the one I forgot about. I love Brigsby Bear so much. It was hilarious. It was super weird and uncomfortable, and it was like mega adorable. Yes, everyone should see Brigsby Bear. It made me very happy.
Brigsby Bear is written in, I don't think it was directed by, I don't really remember, but it was at least written by and stars Kyle Mooney. He does some writing for like SNL. Not really an actor, at least up until now. And he plays the main character who is obsessed with this TV show Brigsby Bear. We did a full review of Brigsby Bear. I would check that out too.
Yeah, I was going to say, we don't have to get super into it, but...
We both really enjoyed it. This is going to appear later on my list too. We'll kind of get it out of the way now. We can breeze by it when we get to it on my list. Really quirky movie. It also has like Mark Hamill's in it as kind of not a cameo performance, but like a supporting performance.
Mm-hmm.
Greg Kinnear's in it, and I really think Greg Kinnear does a great job in this movie too. He's a cool character. A lot of young unknown actors that have sort of supporting roles in this movie that do a great job too, and it's just a feel good, fun movie. And it gets weird, and it like gets borderline, like, oh, it's gonna go to a dark place, but it never really does. It just kind of
keeps it light.
Yeah, it keeps things happy and light, and in general you kind of just feel good about everything by the end of the movie, and it's just a fun, quirky movie. So it's out on Blu-ray now. I know that a lot of people probably didn't get a chance to see Brigsby Bear, but it's on my top 10 list. It's on Dana's top 10 list. Go see this movie. It's a great movie, and I think you'll feel good after you see it. I initially compared it to Swiss Army Man. It's not as weird as Swiss Army Man. It's much more accessible than that.
Yeah, I would agree.
But in that same vein of being a very odd movie.
Right. It's odd. It's out of the mainstream of storylines. But that's kind of what we want. You know, I personally, anyway, I want to see new stories.
So, we'll jump back into my list then. My number 9 is Get Out.
Guess what? My number 9's Get Out too.
There is no Get Out 2. There hasn't been a sequel yet.
Shut up.
So anyways, Get Out made both of our lists at number 9. This is kind of another cultural phenomenon of a film.
For sure.
I mean, this movie kind of blew everybody away, and it surprised everybody with just how good it was. Jordan Peele basically announced himself as one of the big-time future writer-directors. I don't know that we'll see him behind the camera or in front of the camera too much more, honestly. I think he's going to focus on directing now, and he should, because this was one of the better directorial debuts that I can remember. And this is a great movie. It's scary. It's not, I mean, it's funny, but it's not funny, really.
Yeah, I don't really
terrifying.
understand why it was categorized as a comedy in a few different award things, because
Well, the Golden Globes. Because the Hollywood Foreign Press Association just thinks Get Out and The Martian were hilarious.
They got a weird sense of humor.
And there's humor in Get Out, don't get me wrong. But
it's not a comedy.
There's humor in a lot of horror movies. That doesn't make them not horror movies. So, Get Out does so much so well. It subverts a lot of expectations about what we think about race. It subverts what we think about privilege. And it's uncomfortable to watch as a, white person who doesn't consider himself racist, because really that's who the movie targets. It pretty much, it does kind of the suburban, think of themselves as,
liberal,
race-friendly, liberal white people. Those are the people that this film makes, or should make, a little bit uncomfortable and make them question how they actually treat people and think internally about race. It's a messed up movie, and it gets a little weird at the end, but it's creepy and it's scary, and I loved it.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I feel like, I'll say it as a white person, there's nothing wrong with being a little uncomfortable sometimes and checking in with yourself to, about your own biases and things like that. So, I thought the film was great, and way to go, Jordan Peele. So that was my number 9 also, so you can go ahead with your number 8.
I think our number 8s are the same too.
Cool.
I had It as my number 8 film of the year.
Samesies.
So to me, It tapped into the nostalgia factor that something like Stranger Things also taps into. It has that Amblin, Stand By Me, Goonies thing going on, where you've got anything where there's a group of kids banding together, especially when it's in the 80s or 90s, a period that I'm nostalgic about, going on an adventure, bonding, experiencing hardship. I love that shit. That shit gets me going.
And when it's done well. Obviously, we all know I'm a Stephen King fan. So, thank God that somebody did something right this year with Stephen King, which we will not name the other horrible. Well, I guess there was a few. There was some good Stephen King and real bad Stephen King this year. But this movie, I think that part of it probably was the cast, and that Stranger Things was so successful that, you had some overlap into this movie with Finn Wolfhard. Is that his name?
Finn Wolfhard.
Oh, cool. I was right. He's obviously great, but all the kids did a really good job. I'm still trucking my way through this book, so I'm getting pumped for the next part in this story to come out. But yeah, I think that the original It, when it was out in the 80s, it's funny because it's terrible. But when it came out, people were a little bit blown away by it, I think. At least I was. I was a super young kid at the time. But, I thought it was scary. I thought it was a, super creepy story. And I have all sorts of nostalgia with it. But then if you go back and try and watch it as an adult, it is terrible.
Do you know that Tim Curry was so scared of clowns that he refused to have anyone show him what he looked like in a mirror while he was making the original It?
As well, he should not have, because that is the only thing that it was actually scary about the original miniseries. Is
that
Tim
and
Curry.
the acting.
Well, wait, what?
The acting was also terrifying.
Well, yes, yes.
No, the It remake was so much better than the original.
Well, right, that's what I'm saying,
Pennywise
though. It's
was-
like they took the nostalgia that everybody feels around the miniseries and actually made it into what we all wanted it to be, / maybe falsely remembered it to be.
Yeah, it's great. The kid / teenage actors, however old they are, they're fantastic. Pennywise, played by Bill Skarsgård, that was the thing that everyone was skeptical about because they're like, oh, but it's not Tim Curry. It doesn't have to be Tim Curry.
It was a tough act to follow, but he did it.
Well, it was less of a human character than what Tim Curry made it out to be. It was much more of a monster.
True, yeah.
You know, it was...
And they stayed a little bit more true to the book, from what I can tell, in certain aspects, not in all, but...
I thought the gore was great.
Oh, yeah.
There was some really cool stuff that happened in that movie. I thought it was just really well done. I loved it. I can't wait for the part 2.
Same.
What is your number 7?
My number 7 was Shape of Water. I really struggled with this one. It almost didn't make my list at all. I really enjoyed the movie. That's not to say that I didn't love it. I feel like there was a little bit of hype. Shout out to my coworker Alberto. We talked about this movie for a long time before it came out. We both love Guillermo del Toro. Him probably more so than me. He's a diehard fan. But so yeah, I feel like there was a lot of build up to it. I couldn't wait to see it, and I did really like it. It's not my favorite of his works. So maybe I was a little bit let down by it, but it was a visually beautiful movie, cool story. So it was tough because there were so many movies that I really liked this year.
Yeah, it's on my list. It's a little further up for me. But again, I'm a huge Guillermo del Toro fan. This was also not my favorite Guillermo del Toro movie. I enjoyed Pan's Labyrinth and Devil's Backbone more. But that being said, I thought this was a beautiful movie. I thought the score was excellent. I thought the set pieces, the set designs, the apartment, the little complex they work in, everything was great. Michael Shannon is like the current go-to bad guy. He's great. He's awesome. Like, he just needs to be there and say some fucked up shit in his little Michael Shannon way, and you got a bad guy.
It's true.
I thought the creature design was great. I thought Doug Jones was great. Sally Hawkins killed it this year between this and Maudie.
Yeah, Maudie was one that could have gotten... It was shy of my honorable mention list, but that was a great movie this year, too.
Maudie was one of those movies that it wasn't the best movie, but it had some great performances, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was at with that.
So yeah, Shape of Water was great. We'll probably be talking about it again in a minute here. My number 7 was Lady Bird, which I know is a little higher on your list.
Exactly.
So I loved Lady Bird, and I very well could have put it higher up on my list. I thought it had great performances. It was a all-time coming-of-age story. I think it's going to go down as kind of an all-time classic, really. I feel like maybe I didn't have the frame of reference for it that a woman might. Maybe like that I feel like that daughter-mother relationship is at the heart of what this movie's about. And if you didn't live that, then it probably doesn't resonate quite as much. Like, you can appreciate it. I could appreciate it as a great movie, and I think it's funny, and I think it's, it's you get emotional with it. There's a lot of good things that happen in this movie. There's a ton of great performances by everybody involved, but I understand why I maybe didn't connect with it as much as you did.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate. I think we had pretty similar feelings about it. When we both saw it, we both immediately liked it a lot. But yeah, obviously, my life experience with it, and not even just the mother-daughter stuff, but even just being a teenage girl is obviously, going to be a different coming-of-age story than a teenage boy. So, yeah, but I still think it is a universally... no, that's not really a word. I'm going to backtrack on that. It's still something that everyone can appreciate, I think. I was going to say something weird. I wasn't really sure where I was going with that.
It's all good. What's your number 7 there?
No, we're on 6 now.
Oh, what was your 7?
My 7 was Shape of Water.
So it was. Number 6.
Number 6. Now, this movie I first saw at Fantastic Fest. It did get a wide release, but not a whole lot of press. I imagine because of the subject matter was not as wholesome as it might have looked on the surface. Bummed me out that it didn't get more attention. But I had Professor Marston and the Wonder Women. I super loved this movie when we saw it at Fantastic Fest, and we got to do a Q&A with the director afterwards, which was super fun. She put a lot of time and effort and research into this story. Everybody loves a true story, which is kind of cool. Obviously, this is about the creator of Wonder Woman, and basically goes into his life with essentially his, I guess you can't really say two wives. That makes it sound more of like a polygamist relationship, which it really wasn't.
His wife and their girlfriend.
Yeah, that's really a better way to do it. But yeah, they had this like lifelong relationship together, had a family together, and you know, what, in the 1940s, 30s, 40s?
Yeah, it's like 40s
50s?
or 50s, something like that.
Yeah, so I mean, still not conventional by today's standards. Definitely not back then. But I thought that it explored a lot of things that make people uncomfortable, but showed it in a light that wasn't necessarily, you know, deviant. I don't know. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, it dives into things like polyamory, BDSM,
bisexuality.
Yeah. And these are things that are still kind of hot button issues, and still things that people disagree with. And we're talking, you know, these are issues that were still a problem 70 years ago. It's you know,
it's kind of a bummer when you think about it like that, but yeah.
But it was a great movie. It's a true story for the most part. You know, obviously there are
I mean, I'm sure they had
basically a true story.
Right. Anything where they can show actual photos of the people in the movie during the credits, I always think is super fun. So, I
gotta say, Professor Marston, they did you a great service by casting Luke Evans.
Well, the pictures that they had of the three of them were when they were all quite old, too. Like, little old ladies, and it was like...
He looked more like Ted the lawyer from Scrubs.
We're watching that right now. All right, go ahead. Number 6 for you.
Number 6 for me was my one and only comic book film that made my list, and that is Thor Ragnarok.
That was a close one for me, too.
Now, I went back and forth between Thor Ragnarok and Guardians of the Galaxy 2. They both could have made my list. I found them both to be very similar in a lot of ways, and I felt very similarly about them. But, to me, Thor Ragnarok was a little bit better movie. I thought it was a little bit less formulaic than Guardians of the Galaxy 2. They're both less formulaic than most Marvel films are, but I thought Thor Ragnarok, with what Taika Waititi did to kind of just make it his own thing, it's funnier. It's got like a great, weird synth score that's going on with it. There's some crazy like supporting characters. In general, it was just, it didn't feel like your average Marvel movie. It was more of like a buddy comedy space epic. It was bizarre, and I loved it.
Yeah, it was great.
I don't really have too much more to say about Thor Ragnarok other than it was probably the most like purely entertaining movies that I saw all year. I really enjoyed it. So that was my number 6. Are we on 5 now?
Yes.
What is your 5?
My number 5, I don't think that we've really talked about it at all. And we saw it at Fantastic Fest, and it has not come out yet. So this is one that will be coming out this year for the rest of you who have not seen it yet. The Death of Stalin. I would say up there with The Disaster Artist, more so I thought the funniest movie I saw this year. I obviously won't go into it too much since it's going to come out. I don't want to be spoilery, but I thought it was hilarious. You got Steve Buscemi in there. You got Jeffrey Tambor, which his recent allegations bum me out, but you know, live and learn. Who else we got in that one?
In The Death of Stalin, Michael Palin from Monty Python.
Yep. I mean, really kind of an all-star older dude cast, but it's sort of a little bit of a historical comedy, we'll say. I just thought it was super funny. I can't wait for it to come out and for everybody else to see it. Because, yeah, it was my number 5 for sure.
Yeah, the death of Stalin basically takes the death of Stalin and the ensuing aftermath of Steve Buscemi's Khrushchev basically taking power, and the sort of absurdity of the entire situation and how kind of fucking crazy it all was. It tries its best not to downplay the fact that it was also a very violent and dangerous time in the Soviet Union, and it doesn't really downplay how fucking sadistic Stalin was either. Everyone was very frightened of him, and that's very clear. But it was such it's a comedy of, they call it like the comedy of terrors.
Yeah.
Because it's basically is a comedy of errors. It's these situations that shouldn't really be funny, that are funny based on how just
absurd.
Incompetent and absurd these people are.
And, I mean, the line delivery and the writing is just perfectly kind of witty and dry and just, it's funny.
It was written and directed by Alexander Yanucci, who does, he's like the showrunner for Veep. So you've got, I'm not a huge Veep fan, but obviously it's a very successful show, and it has some very quick and witty writing, and this movie has that as well. I thought it was one of the best movies of the year as well. Moving on to my number 5. We already talked about it. My number 5 is The Shape of Water. I don't think there's too much more that needs to be said. Shape of Water is a great film. It's on both of our lists. Let's move on to your number 4.
All right, my number 4 was another Fantastic Fest film. My picks from that were all kind of right in a row there. This was a French film that we saw there, so it did not get a wide release. Probably won't. But if it's something that you can dig up somewhere, I highly recommend it. Totally hit me right in the feels, but was sort of like a feel-good film also. I won't even try for the French title, but the English translation is called See You Up There.
It's based on a French book, actually, too.
Oh, now I'm blanking. Which war did it take place during?
World War I.
Thanks. That's what I was going to say. Just want to be sure. So, yeah, it's a story of a couple different soldiers during World War I, coming from a few different backgrounds and life places in terms of rich versus poor and things like that. Sort of the things they go through the war a little bit and what they experience afterwards. One soldier was sort of hideously disfigured. That's kind of happens right in the beginning, so no real spoilers there. But survives, and it's sort of the story of this other soldier who, you know, decides to help him because he feels responsible, and they kind of come up with this scheme to get back at the man, I guess. But I thought that it was really great. It was heartwarming. It was visually really cool and artistic, and yes, it felt very, might be one of my sort of personal classics. I loved it.
This was one of my favorite movies of Fantastic Fest, probably my second favorite after The Death of Stalin. The only reason it wasn't on my top 10 list, honestly, is because it has been a while since I saw it, and I need to see it again. Because it was on there for a very long time, and it was one of the last cuts I made. It's a beautiful movie. There's a lot of really interesting things that happen. Some of the costumes are just outstanding. It is a period piece. Obviously, it takes place like right after World War I. It has one of the all-time like most cruel, sadistic villains, and it's a very, I don't know really how to say this. If you're familiar with French cinema, it does seem like a very French film.
Yeah, I guess I can't really put my finger on it either, but it has that vibe.
It's like the amount of kind of saccharine melodrama would maybe seem sappy and over the top in a Hollywood film, but it works with a French film. I don't know what it is, if it's the language, if it's just the way they make films. I don't really know, but it works on a number of levels. It's a long movie. It's kind of it's like a sweeping epic, honestly. And it is kind of like a buddy drama film where these two soldiers, survive this ordeal. And yeah, they basically try to get one over on the people that got one over on them. And there's heartbreak, and there's death, and there's sadness, but there's also, there's happiness involved as well, and there's good things that happen to these characters. And it's not entirely a feel-good story, but in the end, you still come out feeling good about things, and you still come out feeling good about what you watched. And it's a good movie. I don't really think it's available anywhere right now, to be honest with you. I've kind of tried to see if you can stream it anywhere. I don't think you really can yet. So this is one that might take a while to kind of get its way over here. But if you can find See You Up There, it's a French film. Look for it. It's a great movie.
Indeed. Your number 4?
My number 4 is Brigsby Bear, which we talked about already on your list, so we won't get into. But this is pretty high up on my list. Seriously, I love these quirky, weird movies. This is a great one, and it's funny. And the lack of Wes Anderson in 2017, maybe this filled my little Wes Anderson filled heart-shaped gap.
Fair enough.
My soul. I don't know. But Brigsby Bear is a great movie. Go see it. Number 3 for you.
My number 3 we have talked about also. Lady Bird. Obviously, it was much higher on my list than your list. And yeah, I think mostly because of the differences in perspective we each are going to have on it, obviously. And I did think, Saoirse Ronan was great. She totally nailed, late 90s, early 2000s teenager. And obviously, great writing, all that. I loved Laurie Metcalf. I've always thought she was a great actress. I feel like I've kind of been following her career since Roseanne, watching her on the terrible sitcom as a kid. But, yeah, I've always really liked her, and I thought she was amazing in this movie, and I feel like she's, getting recognized with the nomination. I don't think she'll win it, but, I've got my fingers crossed for her. I think she was great.
So my number 3 is The Death of Stalin. We talked about The Death of Stalin at length already. It will be out. I think it gets a release like this month, and I think it's going to be a limited release. But if you can find like a smaller theater or like an art house theater or whatever playing The Death of Stalin, please, please, please go watch it, because it's really good. It's really smart, and it's really funny.
All right, that brings us to number 2 on my list. This was at my number 1 for a long time. Just recently knocked out of place, but my number 2, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I cannot say enough good things about this film. This is another one that was really funny, even though it was a super dark topic, super dark story and sort of source material there, but yeah, the writing is just spot on. The characters are amazing. Even listening to Frances McDormand speak ever, you would think that this was her daughter and this was her life. She just completely embodied that character.
Yeah, I guess I can go ahead and jump ahead a little bit here, because 3 Billboards we're going to get back to it because it's my number 1 film. But
yeah.
So 3 Billboards was the best movie of the year to me. It was the most well-written film of the year. I thought the dialogue carried the movie. Martin McDonagh is a fantastic writer and director. In Bruges is a woefully... It's not... I don't want to say it's underrated, because it does have a cult following, but In Bruges needs to be more widely recognized as the fantastic film that it is. And I think that he's finally getting the recognition he deserves with 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. The performances are fantastic, and I think that is driven largely by Martin McDonagh and the script and the directing. But Frances McDormand is amazing. Woody Harrelson's amazing. Sam Rockwell's amazing. Peter Dinklage is amazing. Every performance is pretty much spot on, and none of the characters are one-dimensional. They're all well-rounded. There's other cast members too. There's just so much going on in that movie. And John Hawkes as Frances McDormand's ex-husband, he's great. And you think he's going to be a complete asshole, and he's he's not. They're all well-rounded characters. They're all realistic characters that have flaws and problems, and they're all kind of assholes, but they're not entirely assholes, and it's perfect.
Yeah, it really was in my number one spot for a long time. I think our number one and number two are kind of flip-flopped here, so you can go ahead with your number two.
Okay, so your number two was Three Billboards, and it's my number one. My number two, and I'm assuming your number one, is Call Me by Your Name.
Bingo.
So obviously we both loved both of these movies. You liked Call Me by Your Name. It's your number one movie. I think you need to talk about it.
Yeah, I did have it as my number one. Like I said, Three Billboards securely had the spot right up until I saw Call Me by Your Name, which was only a few weeks ago. It had been getting a lot of buzz. It was supposed to be really good. We obviously made the effort to see it. And I don't know if it was what I expected or if it exceeded what I expected. It just got me, though. I don't know, it was one of those get you in the feels. You felt kind of heartsick after, or I felt kind of heartsick after watching it. But it was a completely beautiful film, and I loved it. I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, from the setting in this, like, summer in Italy, which is just mesmerizing and beautiful, and you want to be there. It's like this idyllic summer life that you want to be a part of, and it takes place in the 80s, and the music just kind of gets you, and there's like
the original music I think helped for me too with how much I loved it.
There's like a particular scene with Armie Hammer just kind of dancing, and it's just great, and it's memorable, and it's kind of beautiful, even though he's not the greatest dancer, and he looks kind of goofy, but he also, but it's
I think the filmmaker does a good job of letting you see the characters through each other's eyes. Obviously, it's a love story, and I'm sure there were lots of people out there who didn't like it or were uncomfortable with it because it is a gay love story.
It was one of two movies that we saw this year that we had a walkout in the theater.
We love the walkouts.
This particular movie, there was an old gentleman who walked out during a scene, a particularly graphic. It's not graphic. Well, I mean,
it's.
Let's put it this way: for a scene involving a peach, it is about as graphic as it can get.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. Always makes us smile when people leave the theater. But yeah, I'm sure some people are not going to, or automatically going to feel uncomfortable because it's two men, and one of them being a little bit young too. I mean, the younger character was 17, and his love interest was a little bit older, so I'm sure maybe people drew some conclusions there. But you just felt that heartsick sort of first love, a little bit of forbidden love, just. Yeah, seeing each other's character, or seeing each character through the other one's eyes of this love and infatuation, and it was sort of bittersweet, and I just thought it was fantastic.
This is another instance similar to Three Billboards as well, where the characters seemed real. The characters didn't seem like they were just words on a page, and that's a compliment to the writing and the acting, again. It's not just one person that can make that happen. It's a group effort, and the entire cast does an excellent job of making everything seem like we're just getting a snapshot of this kind of place and time with these characters. And it's difficult to show on screen, I think, especially without, making people feel uncomfortable. The goal of having a gay relationship on screen like this, part of it is to make people that might otherwise be uncomfortable with that sympathize with these characters. That is part of what you have to try to do when you're making a movie like this. That's what they tried to do it with Moonlight, and it was very successful as well. And even going back
to Professor Marston, speaking with the director after the film too, that was kind of her goal too, was let's show this, sort of alternative relationship in a way that makes, possibly critical people realize it's just like any other relationship. It's not as exotic or, taboo as you might assume. They're just people also, and it's a loving relationship.
No, it's when you find yourself watching this movie and both of the male protagonists, who obviously have a relationship with one another, also have kind of almost burgeoning relationships with women in the film at various points in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And you find yourself rooting against those relationships because you know it's not what is supposed to happen. And if you can get somebody who maybe is on the fence on whether or not, being gay is okay, to root for a gay relationship in a film, you've made progress with somebody there. You've made a change. And I'm not saying that this movie is going to break barriers or anything like that, but it does it in a really good way, in a really cool way. I mean, it's, I would say, more graphic than something like Brokeback Mountain and Moonlight, for that matter, for the most part.
A little bit. I think that you kind of hit it, though,
really
in
graphic,
that...
though.
No, I would say I think that it's more real. Like,
yeah.
I think that it looks like a real relationship. I think that it feels like they show, quote unquote, more, just because it feels more natural and organic.
And there's butts.
We all love butts, at least over here, the Cinema MD podcast.
So that's our top 10 list.
On that note.
Butts and all. So I'm going to briefly just read my top 10. And have Dane do the same thing after I'm done, just to recap real quick. So, my top 10 list. 10, The Disaster Artist. 9, Get Out. 8, It. 7, Lady Bird. 6, Thor Ragnarok. 5, The Shape of Water. 4, Brigsby Bear. 3, The Death of Stalin. 2, Call Me By Your Name. And 1, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
And my top 10 list. Number 10, Brigsby Bear. Number 9, Get Out. Number 8, It. Number 7, The Shape of Water. Number 6, Professor Marston and the Wonder Women. Number 5, The Death of Stalin. Number 4, See You Up There. Number 3, Lady Bird. Number 2, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. And number 1, Call Me By Your Name.
And that does it for the top 10 films of 2017 by the Cinema MD podcast. This has been an exceedingly long episode.
Thanks for sticking around.
Back in the day, we talked about Black Panther. Hopefully you still remember it. We will talk to you next episode. Thanks for listening.